Well, Manjul, first of all, sincere thanks on behalf of the Infosys Science Foundation for being the chief guest of the 10th year celebration of the Infosys Award function. As you know, we started Infosys Science Foundation in 2009 in order to celebrate the completion of 25 years of Infosys, and we instituted award in 5 categories: natural sciences, mathematics, statistics and theoretical computer science, life sciences, agriculture, medicine, and then engineering and computer engineering and science, and then social sciences and economics. And later on we added humanities because social sciences, humanities and economics is a very wide area. And we're very honored that the jury of mathematics, Professor Srinivas Varadhan, chose you as the winner in 2012. His choice was brilliant because you went on to win the 2014 Fields Medal, the equivalent of Nobel Prize in mathematics. And Infosys Science Foundation very rightly decided to honor itself by inviting you as the chief guest for this 10th year important celebration. So welcome. We're indeed very honored.
No, thank you so much. It's a great honor to be with you, and of course it's a great honor to be back at the Infosys Science Foundation Prizes ceremony 6-7 years later in a different capacity. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, you know, there are lots of apocryphal stories about you that you would sit in your mother's mathematics classes in the college as a child, and you would correct her sometimes or solve problems ahead of all other students, etc., etc. Can you tell us a few simple stories of those, because the viewers will be very happy to hear and they would be enthused by them.
Well, my mother is a professor at Hofstra University in Long Island, where I grew up. She tells these stories better, of course. But sometimes I didn't like school very much, and so I would skip school and instead go with her to her university. And I'd sit in her classes, and in the beginning I wouldn't understand anything, but I was still intrigued at what she was saying. And then over time I started understanding things and really enjoying it, so much so that I started speaking up in class. And my mom tells me a couple times I corrected a couple errors she's made, small errors that she made in the class. And yeah, afterwards she scolded me in jest that you kekerde. So that did happen a couple times. And yeah, my mom loves to tell that story. She's like, what? She was not expecting that at all.
Well, another thing that is unique about you is you did your PhD under Andrew Wiles, the famous mathematician at Princeton who proved Fermat's loss theorem. And it is said that within 18 months or 24 months of your finishing PhD, you are offered a full professorship with tenure at Princeton. Tell us a little bit about that.
You're asking me all sorts of embarrassing questions. Well, you know how it is in the United States. Seniority is not a criterion in hiring, which has a lot of benefits, and I'm certainly someone who benefited from that. So after receiving my PhD, I'd proven some things in there that were considered important in the mathematics community, and so there was a healthy competition among universities to hire me. And I was just there watching. I didn't understand what was going on, but first I was offered a postdoctoral position, then an assistant professor position, then an associate professor position between various universities. And then they started coming with tenure, and just within a few months, I started receiving tenured professorship positions, which is the highest you can go in the hierarchy of promotions. And this was just about a year after my PhD, and I wasn't doing any negotiation. I was just watching this in awe, like what on earth is going on? Princeton was the first to offer me a full professorship with tenure, and it's also the place where my advisor, Andrew Wiles, was, and so it's nice to go to a place where you're really wanted, and I felt that about Princeton, and I was really excited about Princeton too, so that's what I ended up accepting.
I think it's a great motivation, and you're a great role model for our viewers who are interested in a scholastic career to hear that within a year or so of your completing PhD, at the very young age of 27, 28, you became a full tenured professor. Now, there is a lesson that we can learn from that in India, and that is, seniority is not the criterion. What is important is the contribution of the candidates. So therefore, I think your example is something that is to be noted by all the decision makers in this country. Now, tell us something about your work in your PhD. You are supposed to have improved Carl Friedrich Gauss' work on what's called high compositions or higher compositions or whatever it is. By using the work of Brahmagupta, the 6th century AD Indian mathematician, as well as some of the theory behind Rubik's cube or something like that. I may be representing it wrongly, but
no, right.
Tell us a little bit so that our viewers can indeed appreciate it.
Well, one of the interesting things that I learned as a child, when I was skipping school, I sometimes used to come to India to visit my grandparents, and I was looking at one of the books on my grandfather's shelf, which is Brahmagupta's Brahmasphuta Siddhant. And in that book is this beautiful theorem that says that if you have a number that's the sum of two square numbers, and you multiply it with another number that's the sum of two square numbers, what will result is another number that's the sum of two square numbers. So for example, 10 is the sum of two square numbers, 9 plus 1. If you multiply 10 with 10, you get 100. And that's 36 plus 64, also the sum of two square numbers. So whenever you take two numbers that are each the sum of two square numbers and you multiply them, you always get a number that's the sum of two square numbers. And Brahmagupta has had a vast generalization of this result, which said that if you have, for example, if you have a number that's the sum of a square and twice a square, and you multiply it with another number that's the sum of a square and twice a square, you will again get a number that's the sum of a square and twice a square. And so you had a whole sequence of generalizations leading to statements like this. And I found those very intriguing because you can actually try it with numbers and you see, oh my gosh, this is working, and very non-obvious. So this is called Brahmagupta's identity in modern mathematics. And this was back in the year 628 that Brahmagupta discovered this. And over the next 1400 years, people have studied that law and generalized it. And maybe the real great leap in understanding this, what's called the composition law, was achieved by Gauss in 1801 in his Disquisitiones, where he sort of described the most general form of this kind of statement, that you have a number that can be expressed in this kind of quadratic way, and you have another number that is expressed in another quadratic way, and you can predict that it will be represented in this third quadratic way. And that's called Gauss composition. This is a vast generalization of Brahmagupta's identity. So that, of course, intrigued me when I got to graduate school, because this book, Disquisiciones of GAUSS, is the foundation of algebraic number theory, which is the area that I work in. And the problem was that this generalization called Gauss composition that he wrote in his book took 20 pages of pretty complicated algebra to write out. And I thought, if it's something so fundamental to my field, there must be a simple way of understanding it. And that was a goal that I had in my first year of graduate school. But of course, I was stuck on it for many months. And this is what happens in mathematics. You never know when the inspiration might strike. And for some reason, my inspiration struck when I was playing with the Rubik's Cube. And I thought, what would happen if you took a Rubik's Cube and you put numbers on the corners? And when you put numbers on its 8 corners, turns out with some certain manipulations, you can give like just a 1 or 2 page derivation of Gauss's law and a simple explanation of Gauss's composition law. And that formed the first chapter of my thesis. And that perspective, actually, I thought I was going to graduate just by writing that one chapter, that sort of simplified Gauss's law. But then I realized that that perspective led to many other laws, a vast generalization of Gauss's composition law. So in my thesis, I found 20 other laws like it, using that perspective. That's kind of, the inspiration came from Rubik's Cube. And that's what ended up being my thesis.
You know, one of the common thing that we see amongst our children, youngsters, is their fear of mathematics. I don't know whether it is because the way we teach mathematics, or because we make it more complex than what it is. But you at Princeton, you have taught courses on the mathematics of magic, you know, on tricks of cards, all of that. So do you think that using recreational mathematics as a tool to teach some of the important principles of mathematics, at least at the school and college level, is a good way? What would you prescribe?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the reason students fear mathematics is because of the way it's taught. It's unnecessarily complicated. There's a lot of memorization. There's very little play and recreation. And of course, by definition, the most enjoyable things are the things that are recreational, by definition. So I think mathematics should definitely be taught in a way that makes it recreational, that makes it fun, that makes it playful, that makes it creative, that makes it an adventure, a process of discovery. That's what gives the best feeling to the students when they're doing mathematics. And so that's why in Princeton I teach this course where, you know, I'll start the class with a magic trick, and that'll intrigue everyone, what happened there. And then in order for them to be able to perform the trick by the end, they have to learn a certain amount of mathematics. And by seeing that mathematics is being applied in this way, right away, is what makes it exciting for the students. And I think that can be done throughout the mathematics curriculum with some imagination. Because we as mathematicians, actually, I always view all the work I do as recreational. I enjoy what I do, and my whole, you know, it's just playing around with stuff and trying to find patterns and making discoveries, and it's like a big, you know, it's like a big adventure. And that's how it is for me. And somehow students don't get to see that in their education when they're learning mathematics. And I think if we could really show what mathematics is truly like, and the way mathematicians really view the subject, if we changed the curriculum and made it more play-based and more discovery-based and more discussion-based, and that would really make mathematics fun for students.
You know, even the theory of probability started when the mayor of one of those cities in southern France requested Pascal to solve a problem about how they should divide the booty when their dice game was stopped in the middle, somewhere, not middle or somewhere in between.
That's right. Yeah, probability is such an important subject in modern mathematics and science, but it has its origins in gambling and playing dice. That's right.
Now, what are can you give a few examples of how mathematics can be used in our daily life by our youngsters, college-going children, college-going youngsters, or school-going children.
How it can be used in their daily life?
Okay, can you give us some examples?
Or how it is being used in their daily life?
Yeah, how it can be used.
I mean, most people don't realize that mathematics, even actually the area that I work in, number theory, which used to be an area that all mathematicians thought would never be applied to any area of human endeavor. It was just done for its beauty, as an art. And nowadays, number theory is being used in basically everyone's life almost every day. If you have a credit card, or if you buy anything online, or you send email, or you use your cell phone, you're actually using number theory, because the security of all our communications is based on algorithms that are based on number theory that was developed by humans over 2,000 years, not knowing that it would eventually be so important. So during the time of World War II, mathematicians used to do number theory because they were afraid of developing mathematics that could be used for war. And so they wanted to work in an area where there was no application. But now number theory actually, they would be dismayed to know, has become, for example, in the United States, it's the most heavily funded branch of mathematics, because it's important in making codes, it's important in defense communications, it's important in cell phone communications, and it's important in internet transactions. So mathematics is actually used in everyone's daily life in a very, very important way, even just when you use your cell phone. But we normally just don't think about it. And so most people don't actually explicitly do mathematics every day, but they are using mathematics in a very fundamental way every day. But I urge people to kind of think about that. Like, when you're using your cell phone, it's nice to know what exactly is happening when you're doing that. How is my message being encoded so that it's secure? When I'm submitting my credit card number on the internet, why is my credit card number and my identity secure when I'm using it? I think it's a good thing for everyone to know what mathematics they're using and not just use it blindly.
Just the product of two prime numbers.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And it so difficult to split it.
That's right. That's right.
And find out which of the two prime numbers whose product you have. So.
Exactly. Yeah. So all of modern cryptography, so much of it is based on the fact. Yeah, is based on the fact that if you take two 200-digit prime numbers and you multiply them, a computer can do that in a fraction of a second.
Yeah.
But if you ask it to do the reverse process, another computer to do the reverse process, the best known algorithms will take billions of years to go backwards. Yeah. And that's the basis of a lot of our cryptography and our security.
You did something extraordinary towards your contribution to improve the education system in the country. You are part of a committee that will hopefully announce its recommendations in the weeks to come, or I don't know, months to come. Yeah. At the same time, you had doctoral students at Princeton, and you are one of the most respected mathematics professors. How would you guide a student? Is there a methodology that you could offer to people in our institutions to enthuse and at the same time provide a lot of independent thinking opportunities to students, so that at the end of their PhD they can indeed be able to guide many more students and at the same time add value to the society? Do you have any prescriptions for that?
Yeah, well, first of all, so I took off about a year to work on education policy here in India. And I have to say I'm very grateful to my students for letting me be away that much. But I also think it had some benefits in the sense. So of course, nowadays we have email and Skype and video conferencing, so it's not a big deal to be not in the same place. And that's something that's very helpful nowadays. So I could still be in touch with my students even though I was 10,000 miles away from them. But the other benefit that it had, as you said, a PhD student, their goal is to learn to become independent, to be able to think of their own problems, to be able to think of their own solutions. And so by being away, I think it actually encouraged them to learn to do that. And that was often my message in my emails, that I would just give maybe slight direction as to where they should go, but then play around with it yourself and discover things yourself. That process of discovery is what mathematicians are always engaging in, and that's what they have to learn. And so if you just teach one course where you show that process of discovery and then let them loose and try to do it themselves, that's often the best way of teaching a student to become independent and become independent thinkers, to become adventurers. And so in that sense it also helped for me to be away a little bit, because that dependence is not there anymore.
You know, there is a school of thought which has become predominant nowadays, that research and teaching should go together.
Yeah.
That's the model that Harvard, Princeton, MIT, Caltech, Cambridge, Oxford, they all use. On the other hand, in Germany, they went through this Max Planck Research Institutes and then universities. Once upon a time, of course, you know better than I do, Germany was, before World War II, Germany was the place in terms of producing extraordinary researchers. What is your view on the current model that we have in India, where there are research labs and universities? Should they not both be combined so that the graduate students, undergraduate students, and the research students, they all work together, are in the same place? Is that, am I wrong in saying that it's a good model? What is your view?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think it was a mistake post-independence in India to separate research and teaching. It's an artificial division in some sense. So as a result of that, we have developed some fantastic research labs and fantastic research institutions, but they're isolated islands. And the researchers there don't have the opportunity, there are no undergraduate students there, they don't have the opportunity to pass on that knowledge to the next generation. And conversely, all these undergraduate students across the country, 93% of undergraduates go to state universities where essentially no research is happening. I mean, there are a few exceptions, but basically research is very limited in state universities, where 93% of our students are going, so they never get to see a glimpse of research. They don't get to leave their university knowing the cutting edge of what's happening in knowledge creation. And so I think it's very, very important to combine research and teaching, as you're saying, to bring research into state universities. You can imagine how much manpower of research we're losing, knowing that 93% or 90% of faculty are at universities where they're not encouraged to do research, but they have the highest level of knowledge, they're PhDs. So if we encouraged and made it part of the system, like Harvard and Princeton and Oxford, and like ancient Indian universities did, Nalanda and Takshashila were well known to be these multidisciplinary research universities where students came from around the world. India actually started that model, and then it left it, and other countries are now benefiting from that model. I think it's time to bring that model back to India, combine research and teaching again, so that students can learn from in a place where knowledge creation is taking place, so that they themselves can go on and become great innovators.
I have heard experts discuss and debate about the kind of inventions or the kind of proofs that people come out. For example, there's one kind, perhaps like your guide, Andrew Wiles, who proved Fermat's last theorem, and in the process perhaps created a new field of mathematics. It's such a long, complicated proof that he created a new field. And there are other inventors or discoverers who come out with the simple Euclidean kind of proof, which, you know, I mean, that's the geometry that I studied as a high school student. Now, what is your view on the two models?
Well, I think you need both. Yeah, for some problems, they have these elegant short solutions that take one moment of inspiration. And even though people did years of work on that problem, in the end it was solved by that one moment of inspiration, the simple, elegant solution. But I don't think every problem has such a solution necessarily, and some problems, to solve them, you really have to work hard at it for years with a great focus, as my advisor Andrew Wiles did. He had many moments of inspiration throughout that period of 7 years when he was working on this problem. But at the same time, it required very, very hard work and dedication and focus. And that model is needed too. After all, 400 years, for people tried for 400 years to find that one moment of inspiration, simple, elegant proof of Fermat's last theorem. It didn't exist. He really had to, the first way to solve it really was that hard work and dedication, together with moments of inspiration, but the hard work, dedication, and focus was what was really needed to get that done. So you need both. You really need both, depending on the problem.
How was being guided by Andrew Wiles? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, it was wonderful. Yeah, he's an incredible mathematician, of course, but also an incredibly kind person. He was always very generous with his time. I didn't actually work in his area, but having his great global perspective of mathematics, I mean, that's what a guide or an advisor is really there for, is to provide that global view of mathematics, that experience, which was really what I learned from him, was just that quality of being dedicated, being focused, looking at the important problems. Don't be afraid to think big. You know, just because a problem hasn't been solved in hundreds of years doesn't mean that you should think it's impossible. You should still work at it, work hard. So those are the lessons I really learned from him. And having him there to tell me those things when I was working on problems that I thought were impossible was always very inspirational. He's a very inspirational person to talk to.
Now, on the completion of our 10th year at the Infosys Science Foundation, what is your expectation of Infosys Science Foundation the next 50 years?
Yeah, I mean, what the Infosys Science Foundation has done is really incredible. It brings, first of all, it encourages researchers to do high quality work. So it gives them encouragement, it gives them inspiration. But the other great service that the Infosys Science Prizes and Humanities Prizes provide is letting people know about the great research that's happening in the country, to inspire youngsters to maybe pursue those fields as well and to make their own great discoveries. So that's I think is even the greater service that the Infosys Science Prizes and Humanities Prizes provide, is that inspiration to youngsters to also go on the path of research. So that, I think, is what the real goal of the Infosys Foundation should be. And so maybe over the coming years, the goal should be to reach more people. And one way to do that, that I've mentioned before, is to maybe give prizes also for communication of science. So a lot of these researchers, you know, the public often has the view that these researchers are doing these works in their ivory towers and they can only tell a few people about their work. Science communication is just as important for the public to know what the advances are in the country and for the public to know what possible things they may be able to apply to their own local problems. And so maybe prizes in the future for excellent communication by scientists or by researchers. Maybe prizes for popular science books that can appeal to the masses. Maybe written in Indian languages so that it reaches all those students whose first language of thinking is an Indian language. I know that a lot of our research is done in English nowadays, and I was visiting IISc, and a lot of the professors there were saying that we've made these great discoveries, and now when we go to our hometowns, we can't explain our own work to our own families and to our communities. And I go and visit my old school, and I can't explain it to them because I don't know how to say my work in my own language. So maybe giving prizes for being able to communicate in Indian languages would be a way of reaching even more people to inspire them to go into science and research.
Manjul, thank you very much. Took a lot of your time.
No, thank you. It's an honor to be with you.
Wise words.
No, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.